they're white in color that they're attracted to. They only bloom at nighttime, are the ones that are pollinated by bats and moths. They also, like the bat pollinated flowers all produce landing platforms. The funnel-shaped flowers, that's the idea of, if you have a flower all one color, if it's a solid color all the way through, the funnel-shaped flowers will always point upside down. You need to explain this to me, because the sun, remember, insects only travel towards a positive light gradient. As the sun shines through, the insects will move right on up because they see that positive light gradient. They don't like dark places. If they're funnel-shaped flowers pointing up like this, and they're insect pollinated, you look inside, you'll see that it's white underneath the bottom. So that it'll look nice and bright for them so they can see where they're going. They don't like to go in dark places because there's always someone there to, that wants to get them. The looking glass orchid and the hammer orchid, they both do the same thing. That's the idea where you're going to see that. That's the one thing you will see on the video tomorrow. Where the flower releases the sex pheromones of the female wasp, and when the male wasp keys in on that, sees the flower, now there has to be something that looks like a female wasp, and it does. The reproductive structures of these orchids look just like the wasp, and they come and they mount on it. Then they get on it and mount it, and all the while, the wasp thinks he's reproducing with another female wasp, but all the while, all he's doing is picking up pollen and transferring the pollen into the stigma. Some flowers offer absolutely no rewards for their pollinators and get pollinated. One of the key things here would be the idea of the mimicry. Okay, so they mimic flowers that do produce rewards. But you have to tell me, how do they get away with it? You need to get into the idea of there's be a lot of them. They have to come out immediately afterwards. If there's few in numbers, then they can bloom out at the same time. Here, as far as some flowers produce a lot fewer rewards than it appears, and then they still get pollinated. How do they achieve this? We probably covered 6 or 7 different things. They just make things easier for them. Like advertising themselves whether they've already been pollinated or not. Having nectar guides, I can just cruise right in there. Even though I don't typically visit that species of flower, I can go right on in there and know exactly where the nectar's at and get it without having to waste any time manipulating that flower. They can cluster themselves very close together. Even though they don't produce as much nectar by being close together, they don't have to, the insect doesn't have to travel as far from one flower to the other. So they produce the landing platforms. Anything that makes it convenient for them, that makes it easier for them, they can still get pollinated. So there's a whole bunch of things listed up there that the major and minor flowering plants no different than students in college courses. Once they learn how to manipulate 1 or 2 species of plants, they stick with them. Even though there's other ones out there in quite high abundance or whatever, and they produce lots of nectar too, it takes too long to learn how to manipulate where the nectar's at in this species and that one and that one and that one. They don't even try. Once they learn it with one and they're good and efficient with it, they stick with it. Okay, they're much more efficient, can gather more nectar, and be much more productive sticking with one that they really understand. The idea of why is it important to have your seeds dispersed away from the parent plant. Now this is seeds here. Okay, that's so that you don't reduce competition for like sunlight, nutrients, and things like that in the soil. You also don't want to be breeding with your offspring. You want to increase genetic diversity. Okay, so this is typical in nature and all species. You got to get the offspring away. Okay, even the animals out there, like my deer, but white-tailed deer, when they give birth to their fawns in the springtime, typically it's 2. There's always going to be a doe and a fawn, or a male and a female. But come September, the following year, the August, September, when that buck now starts to develop antlers, the males are kicked out. The females always stay there. They don't go away. All the young females, they stay with mommy, and they have their own family units, and they're there forever. They don't go away. but they kick the young bucks out. They're so low on the totem pole, nobody would allow them to breed them. They harass the young bucks and stuff like that, so they get so frustrated that they leave. Mommies and the aunts all kick them out of there. Now they got to travel 4 or 5 miles down the road to go into another area where nobody knows who I am. And then they move way up on the totem pole. Those will accept them over there, but they won't accept them back in his own area. Those are the dumb bucks. You know, those are those year-and-a-half-old bucks right now that are idiots out in the woods and the ones that all the hunters are shooting. They come by me all the time and they're dumb. So called darn dozo that have been living there for the last 10 years or whatever, they know every leaf, every nook and cranny, and they know anything's out of place, you know. Those are the smart ones, or the buck that's been there a while, if you've got a couple years in. But anyway, all animals, all species kick their offspring out of it. You know, at least the males all get kicked out, so they don't want to be breeding with their offspring. All right. Methods which angiosperms use to disperse their seeds. They use wind, water, and animals. And I'll give examples. Don't mess up your gen and start giving me pollination methods of pollination. Okay, this is seed. These are seed dispersal type things. Okay, that we're looking at here. Okay, how do they use wind? Give me some example. You know, like the basswood helicopters, or the samurais of a maple thing, or the cottony fluffs of a dandelion, or a cottonwood tree, or the milkwood plant, or whatever. You know, the water, they gave examples where they produce, oils on the seeds to prevent waterlogging pontoons. Animals, they're eating the fleshy fruits or burrs and things like that, or sticking to them, and they pull, then they discard them later on. Beetles, they trap them. So to explain that, if they trap them for a short time, they generally glue the pollen sacs right to their that outer shell of theirs. Or they trap them for a long period of time and really douse them with lots of pollen, with the idea that they'll at least get away with some. Because pollen doesn't want to stick to a beetle. Okay, the idea here on the flowers here, focus, go back through the notes there and look at it surrounds temperature. Okay, on cold days, even though the rewards are still the same today, it's a lot colder today. So now they have to work, figure in that not only the flight for cost for flight, but the calories expended for thermal regulation. So on some of those days, especially on the cold days, it's not worth their while to go to this research. Thermal regulation, they have to undergo that process. Don't tell me to stay warm. The whole idea is to achieve flight. So they have to have their fluorescent temperature has to reach a certain temperature before they can fly. Now you guys thermal regulate too. When you get your body temperature is supposed to be 98.6. When it gets down to around a little bit higher, it's just around 97, you all start to shiver. You'll do this for 15 seconds or so. Then all of a sudden you stop. Why? Just that shivering, all that muscle action there, all those nerves firing, hitting those muscles, and making them fire, warms you right up. Then you stop shivering. Then a little, if you're out there in the cold, I throw you out in the cold and I don't give you a coat, you got to stand there in the snow. For the first 5 minutes you're going to be fine, but eventually you're going to do this. Then you'll stop. Okay, I got my heat back up to around 97. Then, a few minutes later, I'm shivering again. Eventually, it's going to get shorter and shorter between the shivers, then it's uncontrollable shivering. You can't stop because your body's not getting it up to it. It has to be at least 97 before you'll stop shivering. That's called hypothermia, uncontrolled shivering. That means you're on your way out. Okay? When you get down to about 96, generally you're passing out. You're hallucinogenic and you're passing out. And you're generally somewhere around there. When you're around 93, 94, you're in a coma.
How long would it take just like in
What if your temperature is 95? Because that happens to you.
Well, they can keep you in a coma. I mean, my daughter
would be
reduced.
like pass out. Like if I went out, let's say it's snowing right now.
Once you get down below about 88 degrees Fahrenheit, you'll
How long
you'll
would that
die.
take?
No, she means like if she just walked outside, how long would she have to sit there, like, without
Before I pass out.
before she like got delirious?
I don't know. But I know, if we're trying to think of the number, I know I'm going to be really close. If you fall over in the water, Lake Michigan in the springtime when the water temperature is at 45 degrees. Okay, because I looked this up before. Okay, but you're generally gonna be dead within about, it was less than 15 minutes. I wanna think it's about 12 minutes. You'll be dead.
So like, it doesn't fall out.
So, but that's not, so, I mean, the idea is before the Coast Guard can get to you, if you want them to find you, fine, wear the life jacket, but you're probably gonna be dead anyways. Because your body temperature will cool
So
down.
that kid that like fell off the spring or whatever and jumped off,
Well,
like, was dead right away. Like, not right away, but like.
well, you're gonna die and show your body, all that cold water around, just surrounding you like that, your body temperature's gonna drop down, you're gonna pass out and just drown. But once it gets down below about 88, generally your organs shut right down.
How would you be able to like swim before like your muscles gave out? Like in the cold water.
Jack and Rose did it for a while.
The more moving you do, the more heat you'll generate though. You wanna stay moving, that will keep you alive longer. That's for sure. But
Well, now I
it
know.
won't take long though. I know I was just looking, if you capsize and you were just sitting there clinging to something in the water, there in the water, it was less than 15 minutes, you're dead.
So you would want to,
You don't have a
you
little
would
bed.
want to float, you would want to swim.
Because you have to live for like 3 hours before you tell them.
In the Titanic.
It was true love. It's a
She
movie.
drops him in the middle of the ocean.
He wasn't.
It was a movie. It was
Remember
a
that one time when
movie.
Torg got so angry about it because
It's
he,
a
like,
movie.
I don't care, there's still room for two people.
I'm not going.
remember that time when Torg started freaking out because he's like, there was room for 2 people.
There is.
On cold days, longer tongue bees will go out because they can generally.
But the
gather,
Titanic
visit
really
enough
did
flowers to
happen.
make them warm,
Yeah,
energetic
but
bees.
the-
Short-tongued bees
I know.
can't do it. It takes too long for them to manipulate the flower.
Jack is an imaginary character.
And we'll-
Hate to break
I really,
it.
I find where those things are at in my notes, and just kind of circle them.